hyphen. At the time, that was a sort of sign of using a pen name. And in those first folios, Shakespeare is Shake-Spear. So again,
that was his rap name.
That was his rap name, yeah. The Boss.
Yeah.
Hello! Welcome to Believe, the Conspiracy Theory podcast. I'm Phil Green.
And I'm David Ferguson.
And this is a podcast all about the world's craziest conspiracy theories, isn't it?
Well, unless it's the truth being revealed, because I think that it often is.
Yeah, because he's mental, and I am cynic. I like to live in the darkness. But in each episode, we bring on a guest. That guest has picked a conspiracy theory they want to talk about. It might be a conspiracy theory they believe. It might be a conspiracy theory they don't believe. Or it might just be a conspiracy theory they think is the weirdest mental shit they've ever heard. And they need two people to make sense of it, to clear the fog from their mind, to demist their mind, if anything.
Yes. And that's where we come in.
That's where we come in.
The bad boys of podcasting.
The bad boys of podcasting come in to clear the mist with our little mist brooms. That's what we come in to do.
Yeah, the mist brooms.
Yeah, that's what they call us.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is another one of our Edinburgh live shows that we did a little bit earlier on this year. We had an absolutely fantastic ride up there, and this is a very, very special episode to us.
Very special.
Genuinely, it is a fantastic episode. Now, if you do enjoy this though, and you would like to come and see us do more live shows, we're doing that, aren't we?
Oh my gosh, yes. And we might be doing them close to you. We might not be. Check in the show notes, and we'll see where we're performing.
Yeah, and if you're not close to you, just get there. Just drive, just get on a plane, just get someone to give you a lift, get a train. Just walk. Whatever you have to do to be there, be there.
Yeah.
The live episodes that we do are a lot of fun. They're a little bit different to the normal podcast. We talk about a lot of stuff that we're not allowed to talk about on the main podcast. Yeah. We have a lot of fun with the audience, so please come along. It is an absolute blast.
Yeah, it's great. It's great crack, and we had such a good time.
We really did.
You will have fun.
You really will have fun. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, where can they do that?
Well, you can do that on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. And our handle there is Believe Conspiracy Pod.
Yes, it is. It's where we put up exclusive content related to the episodes that we have been talking about. Comment on it, like it. Tell us what you think about the conspiracy theories we've been talking about. We want to know your opinion. We value your opinion. We want your input on those things. Do you believe? Do you not believe? We want to know those things. Also, if there are conspiracy theories that you would like us to cover on this very podcast, they could do that.
Oh, yes. You can do that at believeconspiracypod@gmail.com. Send us a wee cheeky email telling us about the conspiracy theories that you're interested in, your opinions on things, what you're worried about, what you're excited about. We want to hear it all.
Yeah. What are you worried about? We want to know what you're worried about. And please make sure that email is cheeky. We will not respond to non-cheeky emails. A lot of the conspiracy theories that we covered on these Edinburgh shows were ones that you suggested. People had emailed us, people had DM'd us with, even audiences suggested other conspiracy theories in the room. We added those to our list, and we found comedians and guests that wanted to talk about those conspiracies, and we will continue to do that for you, won't we?
Yes, because we care about you.
We're slaves to what you want.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about the sacrifice we're making.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, if you do enjoy this podcast and you would like to help support us a little bit, you can do that free of charge to you. Go onto Spotify, go onto Amazon, go onto Apple, give us a little 5-star review. It helps us boost the podcast, it helps other people discover the podcast, and it helps us to grow so we can make more episodes. Also, if you want to give us a 1-line review, that's totally fine as well, isn't it?
Yeah, something like the greatest podcast I've ever listened to. Phil and David are amazing podcasters, or the most fun I've ever had with my ears.
Yeah. Something along those lines would be terrific. And what is the conspiracy theory that we're talking about in this particular episode?
In this particular episode, we're talking about Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare.
Billy S. Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare. Now, in this episode, we had a guest booked. Unfortunately, as is the case with the Edinburgh Festival, that guest unfortunately had to bail on the night before.
A drink problem.
Yeah. That guest will hopefully be coming on a little bit later on after another episode. But we had to find a replacement guest. However, fortunately for us, we thought, well, hang on a minute. This is a very specific conspiracy. Who do we know that is geeky as fuck that could come on this episode and knowledgeably talk about this subject? And then
it was like the light shone upon us. George,
our wonderful tech. George is genuinely a subject matter expert on this particular conspiracy. There are only 2 conspiracies in the world that George knows a fuck ton about. One of them is that Paul McCartney is dead, and we've already done that episode, so we told him, fuck off, George. We don't need to cover that, but we do want to know what your opinions are on old Billy S. And that is what we brought him on for, and he was absolutely brilliant, wasn't he?
Oh, it was phenomenal. It was because we talked about this before, like, you know, just casually, and it was just great to actually really delve into it and discuss it. Like, George was our hero.
He really was.
Stepped up to the plate and he knocked it out of the
He
ballpark.
saved the goddamn day.
And that's a gay man using sporting analogies. That's how much he did.
Yeah, he was very excited. We let him out of his cage. We lengthened his chain just for one episode. We allowed him to come onto the stage, and the audience absolutely loved him, didn't they?
Yes, he was brilliant.
However, if you are watching this on YouTube, because George was on the stage with us, unfortunately, that meant that he wasn't doing the tech, which also meant that the camera died about 40 minutes into the episode, which we did not know about, because apparently George can't do two jobs at the same time. Fucking loser. Anyway, it's fine. So, unfortunately, we have the audio for the whole episode, but we don't have the video for the whole episode. Just that last little bit, we don't have the video for. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, there'll be a title card that will come up for that last part. The audio will play over the top of it. So, don't worry, you will be able to hear the entire episode. We apologize for that. These things happen. It's live. What are you going to do?
And it just goes to prove that it was live.
Absolutely.
It was awesome.
But it's well worth listening to because it is an absolute banger of an episode.
Great episode.
So, Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare.
Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare with George Moore.
George Moore. Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare.
Willie Shee.
Let's bring it on.
Get out of the gravity hole.
It's a fake. Every single bird in the sky is a robot.
It's fiction.
Doubt your government.
It's an urban legend.
Like, they're actually spraying something in the sky?
No way.
A stream of absurdity.
It's a total fabrication.
Are we ready to welcome our wonderful tech George to the stage? Then please welcome to the stage the wonderful George Moore! Yeah! Woo! Yeah!
Hello!
Hello! How'd you feel?
It's very strange to be out of the cage.
Is it?
And on this side of the camera as well.
Yeah, don't get used to it.
And I don't
You're
know how
going
to
back
hold
in
one
there.
of these as well. It's
Sorry?
just, I don't know. I'm new.
Yeah. Bit of physical comedy there. Perfect for an audio medium, I think. That's George holding the microphone upside down. It's lovely to have you on.
It's lovely to be here.
And we have to say, and this is genuinely true, there are only really two conspiracy theories that you are perfect for. This is one of them, and the other one is?
So you've already covered this in an episode where I was not actually there in the studio, so I haven't heard that episode. But it is the conspiracy that Paul McCartney died in 1966 and has been replaced by a lookalike called Billy Shears. Has anyone heard this?
Yeah.
So a number of years. So I work in a podcast studio. I record this podcast, but I'm also a screenwriter and filmmaker. And a number of years ago, I made a short film about this. It's sort of a very silly comedy. You know, the Beatles wake up, fucking hell, I've got a hangover. Where's Paul? You know, and they find him and he's dead. What are we going to do? And they find the lookalike. Anyway, so we made this film, and we were just chatting about this before. There was a number of strange things that happened. Number one is we found this guy, this actor, brilliant actor, named Anton, and he looks just like Paul McCartney. We cast him in the role of Billy Shears, the lookalike character. And he arrived on the first day to tell us, this is so strange that I've got this casting. Because my dad is the chief financial officer for the Beatles record label, Apple. So...
Is that a coincidence?
No.
I think not.
And Paul McCartney's dead.
Paul McCartney
is dead.
Yeah.
Long dead.
He is long dead.
Long live Billy Shears.
Long live
Long
Billy
live Billy
Shears.
Shears.
If you haven't, so the video's, it's a short film, about 18 minutes long, isn't it? It's called Paul is Dead. It's on Vimeo. Go and check it out. It's really good. It's really funny. It's a lovely thing. And you're looking to convert it to the stage, aren't you?
Yeah, we might try and bring it to the Fringe next year as a sort of one-act play. We will see.
Yeah. Not the only person, not the only big famous music star to be considered replaced. Anyone know who else? Avril Lavigne, yeah, absolutely. So we did an episode on that the other day. That will go out in the autumn. So follow our podcast, you'll find that. Anyone else at all? Elvis. Sorry, Elvis is another one. Yeah, there's...
No, Elvis is
someone
still
actually said
alive.
it
well, Elvis is still alive. That's true.
He said King Jong-un.
King John. Yes, true. Yeah.
Biden,
Hillary Clinton.
Those last couple of
Yeah.
weeks. That wasn't
They
him.
actually
That
have body
wasn't him.
doubles, don't they?
They
The
do.
presidents tend to have a body double.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good gig.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them for Biden, or he's animatronic.
Well, because they probably all keep dying off,
Yeah,
right?
they
They
do,
all,
yeah,
they
true,
all
yeah.
have to be 90
Get a
years
bunch
old.
of them.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I know we talked about this before. For the benefit of the audience, what do you think about conspiracy? You are interested in these, aren't you?
I mean, I'm interested in. Obviously, they're fascinating, but it's a broad church, right?
Yeah.
Conspiracy theories. There's fun ones, Bigfoot and Nessie, and then there's medium fun ones like this, the Shakespeare one, which actually has sort of repercussions, and it is a matter of like history, a question of history, and then there's the more sinister things that we hear on Twitter. Yes.
Yes. Which we're not going to for libelous reasons.
No, well, this is the thing.
And
we
let
do
me tell you,
discuss them.
we've tried and YouTube have pushed back.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't cover a lot of this stuff.
No,
right?
we can't.
No,
There's certain
no.
things we can't cover, and that's why we ask it. Because we cut that bit we did at the start out of the actual audio, so we were interested in what conspiracies there are. But there's a lot of ones, particularly involving Cliff Richard. If anyone's interested, ask us at the
Cliff
end.
Richard was replaced by Paul McCartney.
Oh,
when
it's
he left
much.
the Beatles.
Let me tell you, George, it's a lot more sinister than that.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
So this one, Shakespeare didn't write Shakespeare. I think, as we know, this is a classic, actually. So for over 400 years, William Shakespeare has been celebrated as one of the greatest writers in English language. His body of work includes 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and 2 long narrative poems that have had a profound influence on literature and the arts. However, despite his towering legacy, a long-standing conspiracy theory questions whether Shakespeare, the man from Stratford-upon-Avon, actually wrote the works attributed to him. This debate, known as the Shakespearean authorship question, has intrigued scholars, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike, leading to various alternative candidates being proposed as the true authors of Shakespeare's plays. So, George, why did you get into this in the first place?
I believe a friend of mine sent me a very strange YouTube video that looked like it was made on Windows Movie Maker by some oddball, and it was bizarrely
I was very proud of
convincing.
that film.
It was very convincing, and actually, it just sent me down the rabbit hole. If you end up doing this sort of thing, you go right down the rabbit hole, and there are some crazy things out there. But it's actually incredibly convincing, and I am. We will decide at the end whether we're all convinced. But I, for one, am also subscribed to this. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this one, I think I am.
Yeah. David?
You see, I remember having a heated argument with my A-level English teacher about who wrote the Shakespearean plays, and he was like, "It was definitely Shakespeare, Ferguson," and so I'm convinced that it's not. But I'm fascinated by it because Shakespeare is so important, it just informs our lives, and I'm actory, like I did drama at school, of course I did, but like, he invented so many words and turns of phrase, and it really did shape popular culture, popular Western culture, and it is important for that not to have been who we said it was. Why are we obfuscating that? Why are we hiding that? And I find that fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Because I don't think it was Shakespeare, just to put my cards on the table, I don't. Yeah. But I don't want to say who it is.
Have we got any English teachers in? Any authors, anyone that works in that world? No? Great, okay, fine. We haven't got the audience mic'd up anyway, so fuck it. So, origins of the Shakespeare authorship question. The authorship question first gained traction in the mid-19th century when skepticism arose about the life and education of William Shakespeare. Critics argued that Shakespeare's background, born in a small provincial town, the son of a glove maker with no record of an advanced formal education, seemed incompatible with the vast knowledge of classical literature, foreign languages, and courtly manners displayed in his plays. How, they asked, could a common man from a rural town have written such masterpieces, imbued with intricate knowledge of politics, law, philosophy, and history? While there is historical documentation of Shakespeare's existence, birth records, marriage and death certificates, legal documents, and references to his career in London's theatrical scene, there is scant evidence detailing his personal life, education, or literary activities. The lack of surviving manuscripts or letters in Shakespeare's handwriting has fueled speculation that the works attributed to him may have been penned by someone else, someone with a more aristocratic background and formal education.
So that's the thing, right? This is why there's a lot of pushback against this, right? There are people who are incredibly passionate that it was Shakespeare, it was this guy from Stratford, because we like that story, right? We want it to be this sort of this working lad who's gone on to have this sort of innate genius, which is great. I would love to believe that, but the facts, unfortunately, I think are against it.
Yeah, I think there's a number of reasons why this particular thing, to me, that's sort of a little bit of that is rooted in classism. It's the idea that this guy could not have studied people of a particular class and been able to write about them, and that he wouldn't have the skill or talent to do that. And I find that feels a little bit classist. I think so. That is one of the reasons why there's a lot of pushback against it. There's also a pushback against it just simply based on the volume of work that he created in that time, and just the ability to be able to produce it, get it out there in that time as well, isn't there?
I mean, one of the things with the Shakespeare folio, it is written by the same person. Now, I don't know the science behind it, but you can study how the writing was, and you can see that it's definitely the same person that wrote it, same hand, because there are plays that whoever Shakespeare was helped with. And that came out through study of these plays. Not particularly good plays, were half formed and what have you. But that's how we know it was definitely one person. But who that person is, we're not clear on.
Well, the thing is, if you've seen those folios, that elegant writing. Now, Shakespeare's family. I don't know. You'll probably get onto this in your notes, but his family, his children, his parents, none of them could read or write.
Nope.
They only signed their names with crosses. There is a rough. So the Stratford guy, people call him Shakespeare just to differentiate from the pen name Shakespeare. This guy, there is a scratchy signature from him, and it is really kind of illegible. So the writing thing is kind of a big clue, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also fair to say there are people with a formal education that have been to Oxford, Cambridge, who've written books that are absolute turds. Classic example, Liz Truss. So if we wanted to... so the alternative authorship theories. Many alternative candidates have been proposed as the real author behind Shakespeare's plays, each offering its own narrative about who may have been responsible for creating some of the most iconic works in English literature. One of the most prominent candidates is Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford. Have some of you guys heard of him? Yeah, this is the most prominent theory. The theory, also known as the Oxfordian theory, posits that de Vere, an aristocrat with a deep education and access to the royal court, was the true author. Supporters of this theory point out that de Vere's life closely mirrors the themes and situations found in Shakespeare's plays, including his travels in Italy, the settling for several plays, and his experiences in the English court. Furthermore, Oxfordians argue that as a nobleman, de Vere would not have wanted to publicly associate himself with writing plays, a profession considered beneath his social rank, so he used Shakespeare as a front to publish his works. Now, go on.
Also, Edward Vere, in his own lifetime, was known as a great writer of comedy. That's a matter of record.
Like us,
but none of so peers of de Vere have said that he was a great writer of comedy. No plays attributed to Edward de Vere, credited to him, have ever been found. But people in his time said he was one of the greatest writers, especially of comedy.
So, who wrote great plays?
Yeah. And this is the one that you subscribe to the most, isn't it?
I do, yeah.
So in 1857, the first book on the topic, The Philosophy of the Plays of Shakespeare Unfolded by Delia Bacon, was published. Bacon proposed the first group theory of the Shakespearean authorship, attributing the works to a committee headed by Francis Bacon and including Walter Raleigh. De Vere is mentioned once in the book in a list of high-born wit and poets who were associated with Raleigh. Some commentators have interpreted this to imply that he was part of a group of authors, although the 19th century Bacon was the preferred hidden author. Oxford is not known to be mentioned against this context. So this is how far back this conspiracy goes, right back to the 18th century. And at that time, they were much more convinced that it was Francis Bacon. And then the more and more evidence that came to light suggested more and more that it was Edward de Vere, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
I don't know too much about that theory, the Bacon theory. I guess, he was also a contemporary of the court.
Yeah.
But
Baconian Shakespeare is a big deal as well.
Yeah. But as the clues were found more and more, there were things like, so Shakespeare, the Stratford guy, never went to Italy, but there's plays. There's I think 14 Italian plays where he mentions like local customs, certain waterways, certain paintings in the sides of certain chapels. This guy, there's so many clues that came out. In one of the plays, I think the epic poem Beowulf is mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Now, at the time, there was only one copy of Beowulf, and the only person that owned it was Edward de Vere's tutor. Right. So you start to build up a list of these clues that grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, one of the people that might have written Shakespeare is postulated for having written Shakespeare as Queen Elizabeth, and the reason that she gets discounted is she never really travelled. She really did just stay in the UK. It wasn't the UK then, but you know what I mean. And so that's why she gets discounted. So. And she had a great education. She was known as a great writer. She's a very intelligent woman, and I'm an Irishman saying that. So I'm giving her props. You know what I mean? And that's why she gets discounted because she didn't really go to Italy.
Well, I mean, also part of the Oxford theory is that these plays, which we've been told they premiered at the theatres of London, they premiered to the public in the Swan and the Globe. They actually were first written and performed in private theatres for the court and for the Queen, which again it goes against the narrative that we all want. We want it to be this sort of guy that's managed to make a name for himself, but and it's not as fun, is it? That it's private work.
No, it's
that then
absolutely
reached
true.
a public audience.
I think one of the interesting things about this theory is the idea that it would be so shameful that he would be writing plays that was seen as some sort of weakness if you wanted to get into a position of power, because I think that was the idea, wasn't it, that he was going to become
well, I think also just pen names. I mean, this is another contributing factor. Pen names at the time, people used them, and they were always hyphenate. They always had a hyphen. At the time, that was a sort of sign of using a pen name. And in those first folios, Shakespeare is Shake-Spear.
Yeah.
So again,
that was his rap name.
That was his rap name. Yeah, the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So by the beginning of the 20th century, other candidates, typically aristocrats, were put forward, most notably Roger Manners, 5th Earl of Rutland, and William Stanley, 6th Earl of Derby. Oxford's candidacy as sole author was first proposed by J. Thomas Looney in his 1920 book Shakespeare Identified in Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford. Following earlier anti-Stratfordians, Looney argued that the known facts of Shakespeare's life did not fit with the personality as ascribed to the author of the plays. Like other anti-Stratfordians before him, Looney referred to the absence of records concerning Shakespeare's education, his limited experience of the world, his poor handwriting skills, evidence of signatures, as you said, George, and the dirt and ignorance of Stratford at the time. That's hard, isn't it?
How?
It's quite fucking harsh. Is anyone from Stratford? Oh, thank fuck. Shakespeare had a pretty acquisitive. I'm not going to pronounce that. They
You're
also
from Stratford, Phil.
Yeah, I know. They also portrayed middle and lower class people negatively, while Shakespearean heroes were typically aristocratic. Looney referred to scholars who found in the plays evidence that their author was an expert in law, widely read in ancient Latin literature, and could speak French and Italian. For him to have all of that, it does. That's where the theory creeps in. There is a theory that he did exist, but yet other people wrote parts of it for him. But you know, they always say, write what you know, don't they? And it's hard to see how he knew this much at the time.
And there's a number of things in the plays that happened to De Vere. I mean, a lot of this, a lot of his life you can find in a lot of those plays.
Yeah.
I mean, to play devil's advocate for a moment, there is a possibility that this lad that came from nothing just was able to absorb it all in very quickly. We have met those people that are just brilliant, and I had a French teacher when I was at school, Ms. McGuire. I don't know why I'm talking about my school a lot today, but there you go. And she was a phenom. She could just learn languages like that. She learned Portuguese in a day, and she's not documented for doing that because she was studied. I know this is so weird. Go back 40 years, she was a brilliant person. And maybe this is what we had here. Someone who heard the stories of the aristocrats and went, "Oh, I can," and absorbed it in. Certainly, like I've certainly lived the life of Madonna many times. I didn't go to Studio 54. But anyway, but my point is, someone who's a great listener and someone who with a great imagination, there is a real argument for that he had a great imagination. He was a great talent. I don't think it's the case, but there is the possibility that Shakespeare did exist, and he was a phenomenal person. I mean,
there was the guy. I mean, there was a guy, a sort of a Will Shakespeare that lived in Stratford, and they may have had a relationship. I mean, he might have had some sort of deal with De Vere, or it might just be circumstantial.
Like Hannah Montana.
This is yes.
Yeah.
One of the
he
things,
was that century's Hannah Montana. Yeah. Sorry.
the actual Shakespeare Birthplace Trust is an organisation that looks after all of these Tudor buildings in Stratford. Now, I again, this is from the YouTube rabbit hole, so there may be some holes in this. But,
What? From YouTube?
No.
But it was kind of fairly compelling that there's lots of evidence about the people that started that organisation, the people that owned a lot of those ancient buildings. They were it's a grift. Like they're going, this is the house where Shakespeare was born. Nobody has any record of that being the case.
Yeah.
This is where he died. Like, and yeah, it's all just like made up. And there's a lot of there was a lot of like legal stuff to do with people were suing each other because they were making it up, and people were paying to have scholars come and say, oh, this definitely was where it all happened. And there were payments made. That's a matter of record.
But it is very, because of the time, it is very hard to prove or disprove any of that, isn't it? So, and people will just, if you say, yeah, this is where Shakespeare wrote this play, people will just go and visit
People
it.
nod along because there's big stickers everywhere saying this is accredited, this is Shakespeare Birthplace Trust.
Yeah, exactly. Especially American tourists. We've got any Americans in? Yep. Been to Shakespeare's house? Okay, great. Doesn't exist. Okay. Looney believed that even the very early works, such as Love's Labour's Lost, implied that he was already a person of matured powers, in his 40s or 50s, with wide experience of the world. Looney considered that Oxford's personality fitted the one he deduced from the plays, and he also identified characters in the plays as detailed portraits of Oxford's family and personal contacts. Several characters, including Hamlet and Bertram, which is from All's Well That Ends Well, were, he believed, self-portraits. Adapting arguments earlier used for Rutland and Derby, Looney fitted events in the plays to episodes in Oxford's life, including his travels to France and Italy, the setting for many plays. Oxford's death in 1604 was linked to a drop-off in the publication of Shakespeare's plays. Looney declared that the late play The Tempest was not written by Oxford, and that others performed or published after Oxford's death were probably left incomplete and finished by other writers, thus explaining the apparent idiosyncratic. I can't read today. Looney was introduced the argument that the reference to the ever-living poet in the 1609 dedication to Shakespeare's sonnet implied that the author was dead at the time of publication. So, I guess from a sort of, we talked about this weirdly enough with the Avril Lavigne thing to link this in. When, let's say, whoever is publishing your works, whether it's a music company in Avril Lavigne's case, or in this case, somebody publishing the works of Shakespeare, if you know that this guy's already got a record of selling great works and he dies, from their perspective, getting somebody to finish that off and release it is financially is an option they're likely to pursue, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And much easier to hide somebody's death at that time.
Yes. I mean, I don't know about murder in the Middle Ages, but you know, but like it happens now. Like does anyone remember Flowers in the Attic, Virginia Andrews? Okay, so I remember reading that from my granny had that book, and I read it, and she was like, "You can't have read that. That's a terrible book." It is a terrible book, but it's just a terrible book. So, but Virginia Andrews was a money train, and when she died, she only wrote 5 books. There was the new Virginia Andrews, so someone wrote in her style. So I mean, but that's been going on for years. Did you know, who remembers Nancy Drew? All right, so I grew up with those books. That wasn't, Caroline Keane is the author of Nancy Drew. She didn't exist. It was a conglomerate of people writing those books. I found that out a week ago. I was devastated. But this happens, you know, the idea that, you know, we'll get it together, we've got a brand, you know, and we'll write it. So that happened with Shakespeare, you know.
Well, if it's a stage name, if it's a pen name, you know, you can be one person, and then if you die, it's very easy to conceal.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Like the Sugar Babes.
Like the Sugar Babes.
Rolling on.
Like the Sugar Babes.
You know.
Classic parallel. We did do an episode recently on the theory that J.K. Rowling doesn't exist. Does anyone know about this one? It's a real niche theory, but it's the idea that it's always been a team of writers, I think based in Norway or something like that have written the play, and the person that we think is J.K. Rowling is just the front person for it, just what the media see. Just saying. So it can be done. No, it probably can't. So another prominent theory is the Francis Bacon theory, which suggests that the philosopher and statesman Sir Francis Bacon was the real author of Shakespeare's plays. Baconians argue, I love these words. I love Bacon. Yeah, it's good. Great, aren't they? Baconians argue that the complex philosophical ideas and legal knowledge in the plays are more consistent with Bacon's intellectual background than with Shakespeare's modest upbringing. Some proponents claim to have even claimed to find hidden codes and cryptographic messages within the text that point to Bacon as the true author. So this is why I think originally he was the most prominent person, centuries ago, that they thought may have written Shakespeare, because there are they think, some kind of cryptic clues in the text that people have deciphered and have worked out or they think they worked out that it's Shakespeare. The thing I find fucking weird about this, and we've actually talked about this in other examples of this happening with other conspiracies before, is why the fuck would you do that if you were trying to hide something?
Because you want to show how clever you are. I mean, we've all seen the Riddler in Batman. Some people are compelled. I mean, Francis Bacon, apart from being a great artist. No, it's an earlier Francis Bacon. He was into ciphers. He made ciphers and codes, and a lot of the codes that the humanity uses actually originate with him. The Baconian cipher is a cipher.
Well, also John Dee as well, the Queen Elizabeth's sort of magician advisor and mathematician hid. So this is one of the things in these crackpot YouTube videos, but it is quite compelling if you watch all of it.
And George did make us watch it.
I did
this
watch
morning.
all of it.
50 minutes long.
But there are a lot of hidden ciphers that point to Edward de Vere that John Dee has constructed in the publishing of the sonnets and stuff like that. There are strange images, strange shapes on the page which do point to consistently the same symbols of Edward de Vere.
It's all very. John Dee's a fascinating character himself. He's a magician. He used a black mirror. You may know there's a TV show called Black Mirror. And every time we look into an iPhone or a smartphone, we're looking into a black mirror, and that's occultic. That's really
scrying glass.
Scrying glass. Yeah. You looked into a dark mirror and you would see things. But John Dee was a fascinating man, and he was he sort of ran Queen Elizabeth's security guard and security.
He was a spy. And he used to sign his name 007 as well. That's true.
So it's all
which was like a sort of symbolic thing, though I can't remember what the symbols stand for now.
It's carried through. I'm trying to take a drink while I'm talking. So sorry. But John Dee is fascinating, and that all leads into, because there is an argument that I want to say Jack Dee. John Dee.
Imagine if it was Jack Dee.
Oh my God. Well, there'd be no joy in the plays if it was
true.
Jack Dee.
That's true.
If you read the Shakespearean sonnets, my God, they're joy. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Oh, that's like nicotine. It's amazing. Now more lovely and more tempered. Anyway, I read the sonnets. I read the sonnets one day on a bus, and I missed my stop and was crying. And I'd never read them before, and I recommend that you all do it. They're beautiful. And at first you go, no, it's a bit clunky, and all of a sudden you can hear the words. And it's like,
well, they must be clunky because they're hiding in loads of codes, right? So they've got a chain.
Yeah.
Imagine if 50 people just now start wandering around Edinburgh after this show reading sonnets out loud. It's going to be
lovely.
It wouldn't even look mental in Edinburgh, would it? It would look just quite normal.
There already are 50 people out there.
Yeah, there are. In fairness, that is true. And some a cappella groups. Anyway, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Mobile disco, fine. Fucking pricks. Anyway, it's fine. It's all right. They don't bother me anymore. It's fine. So Bacon's reason for publishing under a pseudonym was said to be his need to secure his high office, possibly in order to complete his great insaturation project to reform the moral and intellectual culture of the nation. Fuck me, that's heavy, isn't it? The argument is that Bacon intended to set up new institutes of experimentation to gather the data to which his inductive method could be applied. He needed high office to gain the requisite influence, and being known as a dramatist, an alleged low-class profession would have impeded his prospects. Realising that play acting was used by the ancients as a means of educating men's minds to virtue, and being strongly addicted to the theatre himself, he is claimed to have set up the otherwise unpublished moral philosophical component of his great insaturation project in the Shakespearean Vere. In this way, he could influence the nobility through dramatic performance with his observations on what constitutes good government. Fucking sounds like brainwashing.
But that's a really big thing in the Shakespearean plays. They're really pro-royalist. They're really pro the power that's in control. Now, I'm not saying they aren't humanitarian. They absolutely are. All you have to do is read The Tempest and see Caliban. Like, he's a monster, yet you believe him. Shylock vilified and a very anti-Semitic character in many regards, and yet he has great humanity. He's actually one of my favorite characters in Shakespeare. I love him. You know, I see his point of view. He should have his pound of flesh. God damn it. But he's a great character, and also there's this part of the population they're called women, and they actually like Shakespeare gives them voice
through men.
Initially it was there's the idea that the word drag comes from dressed as girl, because all actors were male, and they get the young guy to play the I mean, if you watch Shakespeare in Love, which I do recommend, even though it has Gwyneth Paltrow in it, you get to see that. Although it does say that Shakespeare was a person, but Judi Dench is in it for like 5 minutes, and she's fantastic.
Well,
anyway,
I mean, it's true that like a lot of the characters are meant to represent. I mean, a lot of people got really up in arms. People like really love to defend Richard III now, like the real Richard III, and go, Shakespeare vilified this character. Now, that character in the play is not about Richard III. He's a representation of a figure in the court at the time. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
This character in the court that they were sort of satirizing, that was a contemporary guy. You know, you don't watch Succession and go, oh, this is just a show about random people. You know that's Murdoch, and it's Locke and Murdoch, and it's the same sort of thing. So those dramas are they're satires.
Yeah, but they're Richard III. He was the villain, and yet he's
that's
amazing.
my favorite play, I think.
It's so good.
The Ian McKellen one.
Oh, and then there's like there's actually not a prequel, but there's that character's in earlier plays. He's Richard, Duke of Gloucester, and it's just fascinating. Also, he's a disabled character, and he's forthright. Caliban's arguably a disabled character, and he's forthright, and it's very forward thinking. Like Sigourney Weaver is going to be playing Prospero in The Tempest in London, because Prospero can be a woman can play that role, but just the idea that women had say, I mean, the wonderful thing in Shakespeare is women are the educators. I mean, we've all heard this, right? Like men are dumb and women are the educators, and and just to have those compelling characters is groundbreaking. So even though the point that I started saying this on was the Shakespeare was to bolster up the royal family and the ruling classes. It is about like the power of people. Like there are smaller characters in those plays that are alive and
which does sort of tie back to what he think his roots are, right?
Yeah.
That perspective on it does seem to link to that. So those who do defend it, that's often the argument that it is written as if coming from that perspective, even though he has observed the behaviours of the aristocracy.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm almost arguing against myself.
Yeah,
here
you
at
are
this
actually.
point.
Yeah, you've come full circle.
I mean, the weird thing is, like, Shakespeare is marvelous. If you read Shakespeare, it will make your life better. If you go see Shakespeare, it will make your life better. The weird thing is, you might be going, I don't understand what's being said, and then there's something happens, and you're in the flow of it. Not if you get a bad production. I went to see Lenny Henry play Othello. He was brilliant. The guy playing Iago, who's like his counter nemesis in it, he was so bad. And at the time, I was an actor, and there's a big speech at the end of, like, I think it's Act 3, where Iago lays out everything he's going to do in the play. And he did that so badly, I wanted to jump on stage and go, right, this is the way it's meant to be done. And because it was just so, but so you can get an actor who doesn't understand it and get it. But if you get a good Shakespeare role, get a good Shakespeare play, you'll be thinking about it for days, and then you'll start thinking, why don't we talk like that now? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, free fringe.
The performance can make a huge difference.
Oh,
I remember
yes.
reading this thing once, which really stuck with me, about the difference between tragedy and comedy, right? And this guy was saying that actually, there's not that much difference. I mean, Shakespeare's comedies have happy endings, tragedies don't. That's the only difference. But actually, if you put on a run of the tragedy of Macbeth, and you alternated the two stars each night. So on one night you have your great sort of Shakespearean actors playing it very straight, and it is the tragedy of Macbeth. No one's laughing. But if you put on the next night and you have it be, John Cleese and Prunella Scales doing Basil and Sybil Fawlty, then it becomes a comedy, because Macbeth, have you killed the Thane of Cawdor?
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I was just killing him. It becomes this and you don't need to change any of the text to make it funny.
Yeah,
It's about
absolutely,
the intention,
intonation and absolutely, yeah.
I want to see that version.
Yeah,
of
that's
it.
all right.
Absolutely.
I think we all do.
Next year we'll put it on. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes, let's do that right here, right now. No.
But Rich, it would be much more fun if the historical figure of Richard III was like Richard III in Shakespeare play, wouldn't it? We'd all love that a little bit more. It'd be great. What's your favourite Shakespeare play, George?
It is Richard III, I think.
And yours?
I'm going to sound so... I really love A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Basic bitch.
I know.
Entry level.
No, it's Titus Andronicus because it's unloved. But no, it's
a great play. In 1880, the book The Great Cryptogram was released, in which it was argued that Bacon revealed his authorship of the works by concealing secret ciphers in the text, as you guys were saying. This produced a plethora of late 19th century Baconian theorizing, which developed a theme that Bacon had hidden encoded messages in the plays. Bacon theory developed a new twist in the writings of Orville Ward, Owen, and Elizabeth Wells Gallup. Owen's book, Sir Francis Bacon's Cipher Story, claimed to have discovered a secret history of the Elizabethan era hidden in cipher form in Bacon and / Shakespeare's works. The most remarkable revelation was that Bacon was the son of Queen Elizabeth. Yes. According to Owen, Bacon revealed that Elizabeth was secretly married to Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, who fathered both Bacon himself and Robert de Vere, 2nd Earl of Essex. The later ruthlessly executed his own mother in 1601. Bacon was the true heir to the throne of England, but had been excluded from his rightful place. This tragic life story was the secret. It was the secret hidden in the plays.
Yeah.
Do you think he was just a bit mental?
It could be a bit mental, but I mean, Queen Elizabeth is fascinating, and the idea that she had a boudoir off the side of her bedroom. The idea that she was the Virgin Queen is not true, but good for her, But she swung
Walter
from the rafters.
Raleigh as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're like Betty, Walter Riley and Queen Elizabeth, the Betty Davis film. That's not the name of it, but Betty Davis did it. She played Queen Elizabeth 3 times, and it was definitely a romance. They got up to things. Betty Davis, I love her. I haven't mentioned Joan Crawford.
You haven't mentioned Joan. Well, you have now.
I have now, but that was the thing in the podcast. I always bring everything around to Joan Crawford. Does anyone know who Joan Crawford is? Yeah, there's conspiracy theories about her too.
That is the most clumsily way you crowbar into any episode so far.
Well, I can't.
But you got it in.
I can't mention Betty without mentioning Joan.
We've got like 3/4 of the way through. I haven't mentioned Joan Crawford yet. Maybe I should just do that.
I haven't done it this run. I haven't mentioned it one time. Just seeing behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, Christopher Marlowe, a contemporary playwright and poet, is another frequently proposed candidate. The Marlovian theory hinges on the fact that Marlowe, who was allegedly killed in a tavern brawl in 1593, might have faked his own death and continued writing under Shakespeare's name. Marlowe was a well-known playwright before his supposed death, and his style shares similarities with Shakespeare's early works, leading some to believe that he might have been the creative force behind the plays attributed to Shakespeare.
Could be the other way around as well. Shakespeare could have written Marlowe.
That is very true.
Although maybe he wasn't born yet. I don't
know.
They
did overlap. They did overlap.
No, I know that. Yeah, but I think Marlowe was maybe 20, 30 years older.
It doesn't say what age he was when he died, but there was definitely an overlap of certainly a couple of decades there. You know a bit about this one, don't you? You sort of.
Well, it's just that Kit Marlowe was considered, Chris Marlowe was considered a great writer, and he was cut down before any really great works. I'm not saying there aren't great works by Marlowe, there are, but he was cut off in his prime. So and the idea that Shakespeare might have been him is plausible.
Yeah. And actually, that in this theory, it is a lot of people speculate more the other way around, that Shakespeare finished off some of Marlowe's plays.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about this one, George?
I think that's kind of on the money. I think probably they had I think they were separate people. I think they both were writers. I think De Vere and Marlowe probably had a relationship. I don't know what that relationship would have looked like. It could have been.
I like the way you said De Vere and Marlowe there, not Shakespeare and Marlowe. Yeah, okay. Did anyone catch that?
But yeah, I mean, it could have been that Marlowe is another figure that De Vere wrote for.
Yep.
Or it might have been, because he was a playwright, because he wasn't necessarily part of the court in the same way, that these were stories that De Vere wanted to write, but maybe were a bit too extreme. I mean, Dr. Faustus is about the devil. I don't know how.
It doesn't really fit with the Shakespearean tone, does it? I suppose.
Yes.
Like it's dark, but it's not that dark.
Exactly. So maybe it was a way to, like Spielberg doing Poltergeist, but it's actually credited as Toby Hooper.
Oh, that's a big debate we could have. Toby Hooper died a couple of years ago, but I got to interview him. He was at Fright Fest, and I said I had a podcast. I didn't, and I interviewed him because I wanted to meet the man that created the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I happen to think Poltergeist is one of the great '80s movies. I really, really do. And but Toby Hooper did the majority of it. Spielberg was involved; he was a producer, and he also filmed a couple of scenes, but they weren't the main body of it. Spielberg didn't get the performances out of those actors that Toby Hooper did. So I just want to be very defensive of Toby.
Okay.
Also, he threatened me. So. Yeah.
And he's here tonight.
As a poltergeist.
Imagine. Marlovians based their argument on supposed anomalies surrounding Marlowe's reported death and on the significant influence which, according to most scholars, Marlowe's works had on those of Shakespeare. They point out the coincidence that despite their having been born only 2 months apart, so they were very close in age, the first time the name William Shakespeare is known to have been connected with any literary work was with the publication of Venus and Adonis just a week or two after the death of Marlowe. It is that is quite coincidental, I guess. But again, we talked about this before on the podcast. When you're looking for those things, you find them and you draw lines where there aren't necessarily ones.
Well, perhaps also if Marlowe was writing for the court, if those plays were going to be performed for the Queen first, then once he drops off, someone else needs to fulfill the role of that sort of that royal writer, So that might be the transition period in which De Vere comes in and takes over.
You are determined to make this stick, aren't you, George?
Well, the first time I ever heard about Shakespeare didn't write the Shakespeare plays was a news article, I think in the Daily Mirror about 1992, and I was a kid, and it was saying that it was Shakespeare, as in a sheikh from the Middle East. And it went on to say, that it was Arabian, and and I love the idea of Shakespeare. I think that's great. But then it opened up the idea that someone else wrote it. And also, the other argument is that a lot of these plays were plagiarized. Like Romeo and Juliet is from an earlier play. Thisbe and Isimus from Midsummer Night's Dream is from an earlier play. But it's
that's kind of like, so we did an episode on the theory that the royal family are reptiles. David Icke's theory on this is that they've hidden clues in that, and that Queen Elizabeth, the reason she's called Elizabeth, a lizard birth.
So clear once you see it, isn't it?
But there is one of these for Shakespeare, I think. So Edward de Vere's symbol was 2 V's. So if you think about that as the W at the start.
Yeah.
And then Ilium Shakespeare, right? So I can't remember from the classics, but there is, a lot of these pen names were sort of puns, were cryptic references to things from the classics. And Ilium was an event in the classics at which some goddess shook her spear, right? And she was the goddess of writing and literature and the arts, I think. So that is the coded double V, Ilium Shakespeare was the pun intended for the name. I've lost you. I've completely lost you.
It's tenuous, George. I'm not going to lie to you, mate. But keep going, all right? Keep going with your campaign. Other candidates included Mary Sidney, the Countess of Pembroke, who was a highly educated noblewoman and poet. William Stanley, the 6th Earl of Derby, who had a literary interest and connections to the theatre, and even Queen Elizabeth I herself, with some theory suggesting that the Queen secretly authored the plays to convey political messages and ideas to her subjects.
Well, it's the satire thing, isn't it? But it's also propaganda. Perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could have functioned in the same way.
Do we support any of those theories? What's your thought on the Queen Elizabeth I one?
I certainly think she had the education and she would have had the time to do it. Like writing a play is a difficult thing. As ask anyone that's brought a show to the Edinburgh Fringe for that. And
not all.
Not
you get
all.
These notes on ChatGPT.
No. But I don't think Queen Elizabeth. I don't think her that's not where her interest lay.
Yeah.
She was actually quite a political creature, and she was. I mean, there's a reason why she's considered she's so well regarded.
Yeah,
but she may well have commissioned plays on certain topics or to represent certain figures.
Yeah. You don't believe that she wrote any of this?
No, I think she may have had a hand in coming up with some things to cover
Yeah.
You know,
Just
and
some
said,
bullet
here's
points, yeah.
some bullet points.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
fair.
some
Definitely
good notes.
Blackadder too.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. Best character in Blackadder.
Oh, I love Queenie.
Best character in Blackadder. So arguments against the conspiracy theory. While the Shakespeare authorship conspiracy theory is intriguing, it's faced a significant criticism from mainstream scholars and historians. The vast majority of academic Shakespeareans often refer to Stratfordians support the traditional attribution of the plays to William Shakespeare of Stratford-upon-Avon. They argue that there is no credible evidence to suggest otherwise. Firstly, there is a substantial body of historical evidence linking Shakespeare to his works, records from the time, such as those from Shakespeare's acting company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men. The first folio of 1623 credit him as the author. Many of Shakespeare's contemporaries, including Ben Jonson, refer to him as the playwright behind the works. Additionally, Shakespeare's name appeared on the title pages of many of his published plays during his lifetime, which would have been difficult to falsify without attracting attention from his peers.
Well, yeah, that was the name that was used to put on the plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the brand.
It's the brand. It's the name.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're thinking this has been done retrospectively.
Yeah, I'm
We're
not
thinking
suggesting
this
that
was
they were
done-
published at the time
Yeah,
as
yeah.
De Vere's plays.
This
and
was
then-
just a pen name.
Yeah.
Okay. Stratfordians also point out the supposed lack of formal education should not disqualify Shakespeare as the author. Shakespeare may have received a solid education at a local grammar school in Stratford, where he would have been exposed to classical texts and learned Latin. Furthermore, some of the detailed knowledge in Shakespeare's plays, such as the legal terminology or courtly behaviour, could have been acquired through research, observation, or conversations with the well-informed individuals of London, where he was active in the literacy and theatre scenes. And this is the thing that I think is really paramount in this, because what we as comedians sort of write about society. They sit on the fringes of society, kind of looking in rather than actually being an active part of it most of the time. But they're observing human behaviour and they're writing about human behaviour. And yes, I am comparing us to Shakespeare. But the concept of that essentially is the same, right? The idea that just because somebody's from a particular class or didn't have the same formal education doesn't mean they couldn't watch that society, observe that society, and write accurately about it.
Yeah, which is believable.
Yeah.
But I think the number of clues that point specifically to De Vere, I think, just adds up. I mean, the Beowulf thing alone is quite something. Yeah.
I mean, personally, I think it was a time traveler.
Yeah.
So
That would be where I would go if I was to time travel. I would go back to
right.
Elizabethan
Well,
London.
you go back, and do it. I mean,
Just go and watch a play, have some popcorn.
yeah. I wrote that.
Yeah. Moreover, critics argue that many alternative candidates, such as Edward de Vere and Francis Bacon, would have had logistical difficulties in producing the plays attributed to Shakespeare. For instance, Edward de Vere died in 1604, but several of Shakespeare's greatest works, such as Macbeth and The Tempest, were written and performed after that date. George?
Released.
He's good, isn't he?
He's good. So the cultural appeal of the conspiracy theory. The Shakespeare authorship conspiracy theory endures not because of overwhelming evidence, but because it appeals to our fascination with mystery, hidden identities, and the idea that history may not always be what it seems. It plays into a broader cultural suspicion that individuals of humble origins cannot achieve greatness without some kind of hidden assistance or subvergence. The theory also fits neatly with the tradition of literary intrigue and cryptology, and conspiracy theorists continue to search for hidden meanings in Shakespeare's text that could reveal a deeper truth. It's fair to say, whatever we think, it's fun, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do we think it's fun? Yeah, it is fun to speculate. I think Ben Jonson was another one. Actually, people did speculate. May have been. I mean, it could have been a team of people. We talk about the J.K. Rowling conspiracy, but generally speaking, it could have been a number of people.
Yeah, I mean, people contribute and people edit things.
Yeah.
You know, so they may. Yeah.
And authors do collaborate with other authors
Exactly,
on
yeah.
stuff. So even now, that's a very, very common thing. And they're not always credited with that. And I guess back in the day, if you've got a brand, particularly as strong as the one that Shakespeare had, you're probably unlikely to be saying, oh, by the way, Ben Jonson wrote half of this, or Edward.
Yeah, well, you might just say, give me some notes. You know, read this and,
Yeah,
and let
yeah.
me know what you think, and add some jokes.
Yeah. So, the Shakespearean authorship conspiracy theory remains a controversial and speculative topic in literary history. Despite the abundance of evidence supporting William Shakespeare as the true author of the works attributed to him, doubt and alternative theories continue to persist. Whether driven by skepticism of Shakespeare's background, the allure of hidden identities, or the desire to rewrite history, the authorship question reflects a broader human impulse to find mystery in the seemingly mundane. Ultimately, regardless of who wrote the plays, what remains undeniable is the enduring power of the works themselves. The genius of Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, and Romeo and Juliet transcends the question of authorship, leaving us with timeless stories that continue to inspire and captivate audiences around the world. So, George, did Shakespeare write Shakespeare?
I believe that Edward de Vere wrote Shakespeare.
No
and it's not just
fucking
me.
shit.
Mark Rylance, who was the artistic director of the Globe for 10 years. Derek Jacobi, and then people like Walt Whitman and Mark Twain. There's a long list of people who have been across this. And yeah, it's the only... it's the maddest conspiracy theory that I do actually subscribe to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. David?
I believe it was Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, that wrote the Shakespearean plays.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. I'm going to go with a theory that I think Shakespeare did write a lot of it, but I do think that he collaborated with other authors, and that's why we see some discrepancies in style and tone in some of his texts. That's my theory on it. So we'll ask the audience, give us a cheer if you think that one man wrote all of Shakespeare. All right, give us a cheer if you think that someone else wrote Shakespeare. One person. Give us a cheer if you think it might be multiple people. All right, this is a really divided room.
Oh,
That's
wow, okay.
fascinating.
First time that's happened.
That is the first time that's happened. That's fascinating. George, where can people see your video on? See your film of Paul McCartney's?
Paul is Dead is, if you just search Paul is Dead short film, you'll find that online. It's on Vimeo, and yeah, you'll see me kicking about Edinburgh for the next 2 days, carrying camera equipment around.
Yeah,
Do you have
on
social media?
Film podcasts and stuff
on a chain.
on a chain. On your
He's
chain.
going straight back in that
back
cage.
in my cage after this.
Quite right
Collar.
too. Quite right too. Would you all like a Shakespeare joke to end the podcast?
Yes.
Okay. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Shakespeare.
Yeah, who?
Exactly. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful
Thank you so
audience.
much.
Big
Thank you
round of
so
applause for
much.
George.
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you. You were great.
See you
Thank
next
you.
Tuesday.
Please like and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. The more lovely subscribers we get, the more episodes we'll make. And follow us on Instagram and TikTok for regular updates and exclusive videos at Believe Conspiracy Pod. We love you. Bye.